Hello everyone. In this After Effects lesson, we'll learn how to create this creative text animation. The great thing about this animation is that it's very versatile, and it's sure to look great on your showreel or portfolio. If you stick around to watch the tutorial right to the end, I'll explain step by step how to do it. This animation is inspired by this fantastic reel by Satyam, which has gone viral, by the way. If you'd like to support the channel, in addition to your likes, you can also become a member of the Motion Graphics Zone on Patreon. There I share all the projects and materials I use in my tutorials, among other things, so you can continue practicing and improving your motion design skills. I've included the link in the description if you'd like to check it out. Okay, let's begin. We're going to create a composition called Animation. I'm going to make it in a square format, but this depends on where you want to publish it or the dimensions you want to use. It will be 30 frames per second and 20 seconds long. With the text tool, I'm going to write, "Do you want to learn?" I'm going to center the anchor point and also center it in the viewport. I'm going to increase the scale of this text a little. Something like that. The font I'm using is San Francisco Pro Display in its bold variant. With these settings, what I want to do now is separate each of the words into different layers. To do this, I'm going to use a script called Text Exploder. By the way, if you like documentary-style editing, my course is now available. But it's not just a course in which I show you how to animate a sequence in After Effects and that's it. But I show you the entire procedure that I followed to create this animation. From the initial idea to the final render, going through each and every phase of the creative process. I'll leave the link in the description in case you want to take a look. It's a paid script, it doesn't cost much, and it saves a lot of work when creating these animations. If you don't have it installed, I'll explain how to do it very simply. First, we lower the opacity a little. We duplicate the text and set the opacity of this copy to 100%. Here we'll write do, and we'll adjust this word using our reference layer. We make another copy and write you here. We place this here, and we have to do this with all 5 words. I'm going to delete these. I'm going to select this layer and separate the words into different layers. We can also do it by characters or lines. In this case, I'm going to separate them into words. I apply it, and that's it. I'm going to hide this one here and set the opacity of all these to 100. Notice, here we have them all separated. Being here at the beginning of the timeline, we expand the position and select a keyframe. Now we're going to move 40 frames forward. We position ourselves here at 110. We activate the proportionality grid, and we're going to create a small animation. We select, for example, these 3 words and move them slightly upwards, holding down the Shift key to move them vertically. We leave them roughly here along this grid line and move these 2 downwards. Okay, that's good. We smooth the keyframes, right-click, select keyframe velocity, and set the influence to 90%. We should end up with a curve like this. If it doesn't look like this, you need to have the velocity graph enabled. If you want, to prevent them all from moving at the same time, let's select, for example, these keyframes and move them 2 squares to the right, 1 and 2. All of these too, 1 and 2. These the same and these as well. And notice, now the animation looks much better. In newer versions of After Effects, if you select all the keyframes and hold down Ctrl plus Alt while moving them, you can easily offset them. There are also scripts that can do this keyframe staggering with a single click, but since I don't have them installed, I'm doing it manually, which doesn't take long since there are only a few layers. Okay, now we're going to go here to the last keyframe and use the rectangle tool. We'll remove the stroke and give it a color we like. We need to create a shape like this, one that spans the entire width of the word. We deploy here in rectangle and disable the size chain. We'll set this value to 100. I'm going to lower the opacity a little, and now with Ctrl plus Alt plus Home, I'm going to center the anchor point. Notice where it is here? Okay, perfect. With Ctrl plus D, we make a copy, and we're going to place this above the word you. We adjust the width. It doesn't need to be perfect. If it extends a little beyond the word, it's fine. Ctrl plus D, and we'll place this one here. Another one. Ctrl plus D, and we'll place this one over the last word. What we're going to do now is rename them. This shape here, which is above the word learn, we'll name it that. This one will be called to. Here we'll put want. This one you. And this one do. Now we have to parent them to their respective layers. We need to be here at the last keyframe, or further to the right. We select the pick whip and parent each one to its parent. Want, to, and learn. Now we check that it's working correctly. There it is. To create the transition between the rectangles and the words, we'll position ourselves at the highest point of the curve, which is where the animation is fastest. We select the rectangle with the word do and cut it right there. And this word too. Since we've given them a 2-frame offset, we count 2 forwards. 1, 2. And we cut this shape right at that point, just like the layer it's parented to. 1, 2, we cut there. And the text layer too. Notice that if we go into the graphic editor, we're still at the highest point of the curve. 1, 2, we cut this one here. This text layer too. 1, 2, this last one here, and this one as well. If we want, we can now set the opacity to 100%. Let's see how this looks. Okay, look at this cool animation we have, and we've only just started. Come on, let's continue. We'll position ourselves here in this first cut, select the shape layers, and expand the position. We'll select all the position properties of the shapes, right-click, and choose Separate Dimensions. Now we're going to select all the layers of this color and, without moving from here, mark a keyframe at position X, since the animation we're going to do now will be horizontal. We'll count 40 frames forward, 10, 20, 30, and 40. At this point, we need to write the next phrase. So I'm going to select, for example, this text layer. Press Ctrl plus D to duplicate it and place it at the top. Here I'm going to write how to make this. We'll center the anchor point and center it in the viewport. We also need to separate this text layer into different layers. So we'll click on this option. We can hide this one if we want. And this one, we're going to change its color. We set the opacity back to 100%. Now, with Ctrl plus R, we bring up the rulers and place one on each side of each word. This will serve as a guide for animating the shapes. Before animating, we select all these layers and type Size. We mark a keyframe on all the size elements. We select them again, press U, and place these keyframes here at the beginning. To differentiate these keyframes from the positional ones, we can change their color. As we said, we move 40 frames forward. Let's start with the shape. For example, I want to transition this one to the word this. So I select it and move it to the right on the x-axis. I lower its size a bit until it fits the guides. It doesn't need to be perfect. In the previous sentence, we had 5 words, which is why we have 5 rectangles. Here we have 4, so one has to disappear. For example, this one. We move it to the right and set the scale to 0. With this one, we transition to the word to. We adjust its scale. We do the same with these. We put this one below how and increase its scale on the x-axis. We put this one below make. We select all the keyframes and smooth them with F9. Now we select the ones with the size. We press the Control key and select all the size properties. Right-click, select Keyframe Velocity, and set the influence to 90%. For the same position, right-click, select Keyframe Velocity, and set it to 90 and 90. This gives us this animation. We move to this row of keyframes and move back 20 frames. We expand the position and select a keyframe on the y-axis. From this point, we move forward 40 frames, 10, 20, 30, and 40. Here at the 220 mark. Now what we're going to do is very easy. We place this shape below the word this, but first, we activate the safety margins to place a guide on this cross, which marks the center of the composition. Now we move the shape down to the y-axis. With Control-C, we copy this value and paste it onto this shape. Here on the y-axis, using Control-V, and this one that disappears as well. We position ourselves below these keyframes and also move it down. With Control-V, we paste the same value. Now these. More or less around here. We copy this value and paste it onto the y-axis. We smooth all these keyframes with F9 and right-click to set the influence to 90%. At this point, where the animation is fastest, we'll make the cut transition. So all these text layers need to start right there. We go to the last keyframes and now we're going to select this shape. Which is the one behind the word make, and parent it to its shape. This one here, which is behind the word how, the same. So we parent this layer to this rectangle. We have to parent the word this to this one. This is the one that's no longer visible. And we parent the word to this other shape. We check that it works correctly and continue. Here, at this point, we're going to select all these layers and cut them there. Let's see how it looks. Okay, perfect. Look at this cool animation. We select these 4 text layers, expand the position, and mark a keyframe. We're going to move another 40 frames forward. If we want, we can come here to view and clear the guides, because we won't need them anymore. Now, these 2 words that were coming from the bottom, we're going to continue animating them upwards. We'll put them here, below this grid line. And these 2 downwards. We'll smooth the keyframes. Right-click, keyframe velocity, and again, the influence to 90%. The thing is, I want them to stay in the center a little longer, so I'm going to move all these keyframes 6 or 7 squares to the right. Or a little less, 6 squares. Now they stay in the center a little longer, but they never stop, and that gives the animation a lot of continuity. Okay, let's continue. If we want to avoid them all appearing at the same time, let's select, for example, the make and this keyframes, and move these keyframes 5 squares to the right. We can do this manually, or with the Alt key pressed and the arrow keys. Okay, I prefer that method. We'll go to the last keyframes and repeat the process with the rectangles. We'll expand the size option here and set the value to 100. We'll lower the opacity slightly and also center the anchor point. We'll make another copy. We'll place this one above the word make. Control plus D. We'll place this one down here. Another copy, and we'll place this one above the word this. Okay, perfect. Now we can set the opacity to 100. Just like before, we'll rename these layers. Well, what I'm going to do is lower the opacity a little more to see what words are behind them. This one's going to be called this. Here, I'm going to put to. In this one, make. And here, how. Okay, now we can set the opacity to 100%. And being here at the last keyframe, we're going to parent each one to its respective one. We check that it works correctly. Okay, perfect. What we have to do now is cut them here, at the highest point of the curve, which is where the animation is fastest. So we're going to select these two and the how and to layers. We cut these two right at that point, and these two text layers too. And since we've given them a 5-frame offset, we're going to count 5 frames forward. We select these two, cut them there, and these ones as well. Look at how cool the animation is turning out. We go here to this cut, select all these layers, expand the position, and also select the position parameter. Right-click, separate dimensions. And we're going to mark a keyframe at position X. Now we're going to count 40 frames forward. Here I'm going to place a marker, and on top of these keyframes, I'm going to place another one. This is where the next phrase will appear. So I'm going to duplicate, for example, this layer. I'm going to put it at the very top, and here I'm going to write viral animation. We center the anchor point and center it again in view, which, although it was very slight, is a little off-center. We separate the words into different layers again. We hide this one and set the opacity of this one to 100. Now we're going to do the ruler thing again. We're going to put one here, on this side of the word, another on this side, another here, and at the end, another one. Okay. Now, we have to animate these shapes. Since we had 4 words before and now we only have 2, 2 of these shapes have to disappear. For example, I want to put this shape on top of the word animation, but I'll start with this one. And before we do the animation, let's select the 4 layers and type size here. We'll set a keyframe on all of them. We'll select them again, press U, and put this here at the beginning. Now, this shape, for example, I'm going to move it to the right on the x-axis, more or less here, where we have the guideline. And now the scale to 0. I'm going to put this above the word animation. More or less around there. I'm going to move this one to the left and set the scale to 0. And I'm going to put this one below the word viral. And I'm going to increase the scale a little. Okay, that should do. We select them all, press F9, and now we're going to select the ones with the size. Right-click, choose keyframe velocity, and set the influence to 90%. These here too. Right-click, choose keyframe velocity, and set it to 90% as well. There are some scripts where you select everything and directly apply the desired influence, but since I don't have them installed, I have to do it manually. Okay, perfect. We now have the shapes ready to create the cut transition with each word. While here we move back 20 squares. We reselect these 4 layers, press P, and now we mark a keyframe on the y-axis. We move forward 40 squares. Now we're going to move this shape upwards. But first, I'm going to activate the safety margins to add a guideline right here in the center. Although it doesn't need to be perfectly centered, it's more for reference. Okay, now I'm going to move this shape a little further upwards, around here. And now I'm going to move this one downwards. Okay, I think around here will do. With Control plus C, we copy this value, and this shape we have here, the one that disappears, I'm also going to move it down with Control plus V and give it the same value as this other shape. And this one here too, I'm going to select this one and go to the last frame. With Control plus C, I'm going to copy this value, and I'm also going to paste this shape here at the end on the y-axis. Control plus V. Perfect. We select them all and smooth them. And with a right click, we're also going to set the influence to 90%. Now, we need to parent each of these 2 words to its respective rectangle. We're going to put them right here, where the animation is fastest, on this marker. We go here to the last keyframe and select, for example, this layer. We're going to parent this word to this rectangle. This is the one that isn't visible. This one isn't either. And we're going to parent the word animation to this other one. We check that they are parented correctly. And right here, at this point, we're going to cut all these layers. Okay, that looks perfect. Another thing we can do so the rectangles stay visible a little longer. is to extend all these layers by one frame. And now we'll move these two one frame to the right. That's optional. Otherwise, you can leave them as they are. We select these two words, expand the position, and mark a keyframe. Now we move 40 frames forward and reactivate the proportionality grid. Here, we're going to place another marker. And I'm going to go to View, Clear Guides. And this animation word, which came from above, I'm going to continue animating it downwards. I'm going to leave it here along this grid line. And I'm going to move this one upwards. Okay, around there, we smooth it and change the influence. But just like we did before, so they stay here a little longer, we're going to move these frames 5 or 6 frames to the right. Let's preview everything and see what we still need to do. While we're here at the last keyframes, let's go back to the shapes. Select the rectangle tool and create a shape like this. Turn off the chain and set the size to 100. Lower the opacity a little, and using Ctrl-Alt and the Home key, center the anchor point. Okay, with Ctrl-D, duplicate the shape and place it here, above the word Animation. Okay, that's good. Now let's rename the layers so we don't get confused. This one will be called Animation. And this one here, Viral. Now we need to parent them to their respective layers, but while we're here at the last keyframe, parent this one to Viral and this other one to the word Animation. If we want, we can set the opacity to 100. And now we're going to go into the graphic editor and position ourselves here at the highest point of the animation, which is exactly where we're going to make the cut. So we'll cut this text layer there, and this shape too. Well, actually, we're going to cut both layers at the same point, just like the shapes. To close the loop, we're going to put the same phrase here as at the beginning. So I'm going to select it, make a copy, and place this copy at the very top. And again, we need to separate each word into different layers. We'll hide this one, change the color of these layers, and set the opacity to 100%. We'll turn off the grid, and now we're going to put a ruler on each side of each word. Now we'll select these two shape layers. We'll expand the position and separate the dimensions. And right here at the cut, we're going to mark a keyframe at position X to animate them from left to right. We'll count 40 frames forward. Now we have the opposite problem. We have two shapes, but 5 words. So, instead of one disappearing, we need to make another one appear. Well, we're going to do that very easily. First, we'll select these two layers and type size here. We'll mark a keyframe on both. We press the U key again, and we'll place these two right here at the beginning. Let's start, for example, with this one. With this rectangle, I want to create the transition to the word want and the word to. So I'm going to move it more or less around there and also increase its scale a little. Okay, that's perfect. To create the transition with this word, what we're going to do is duplicate this shape layer. Press U. And here we're going to continue moving it to the right until it's on top of this word. We also need to adjust its scale. Okay, there it is. Perfect. We're going to do the same with this one. We need to transition to the words do you. So we'll move it to the left, place it below the word you, and scale it down quite a bit on the x-axis until it aligns with these two guidelines. We move it a little further to the right. Okay, perfect. With Control D, we make a copy and press the U key, and here, we continue moving it to the left. We adjust the scale and position it correctly. We can make another copy of this one, and we'll move this one to the right, here below the word learn. Okay, that's perfect. We select them all, press F9, and we also need to set the influence to 90%. Let's start with the size. Right-click, keyframe velocity, and set it to 90. And the same for the position. Right-click, keyframe velocity, 90 and 90. So we have this animation. Okay, being here at this point, we're going to move back 20 frames. We select all these layers again, press P twice, and now we're going to mark a keyframe in the shape Y. We count 40 squares forward. Now what we have to do is fit each of these shapes with its respective words. Let's start, for example, with this one. Remember that it's on the y-axis. I'm going to activate the safety margins to put a guideline right here in the center. Around there, more or less. With Control plus C, I'm going to copy this value. And I'm going to paste it also to this shape on the y-axis, Control plus V, and also to this other one. We're going to move these two down. Around there. We copy this value and paste it to this other shape. Control plus V. We select all these keyframes again, smooth them, and also set the influence to 90%. Okay, perfect. Just like we did before, now we have to parent each text layer to its respective rectangle. So we're going to do it one by one, so we don't get confused. This one here, the one behind the word do, we select and parent it to this layer. Important, we must always be on the last keyframe, or slightly to the right. This one behind the word learn, we select and parent it to this rectangle. We're going to parent this one to you. We'll parent this other one to 2. And that leaves us with this last one, which we'll parent to with want. Now, let's check that it's working correctly. Okay, perfect. We're going to position ourselves right here at this point, which is where the peak of the curve is. And right here, we're going to cut all these layers, Control plus Shift plus D, and delete them. Without moving from here, we're also going to cut the text layers in this area. Now we're going to position ourselves here at the last keyframe. And while we're here, we're going to move one frame back, and right there, we're going to press the N key to close the loop. Now let's do a preview to see if everything is working correctly. Wow, this looks perfect. It's a really cool animation, actually. If you want to finish up, let's add a couple of effects. With a right click, we're going to create a solid, which we'll use for the background. We'll make it a fairly dark gray and move this solid to the very bottom. Right click again, select New, then Adjustment Layer. Where is it? Okay, it's down here. Let's move it to the top. We're going to add 2 effects to this adjustment layer. As I said, this is also a matter of personal preference. The first one is called Posterize Time. This makes the animation appear slightly choppy instead of at 30 frames per second, giving it a stop motion look, which can look quite cool in some animations. Take a look. Well, it looks perfect there. We're going to add another effect called Turbulent Displace. We'll set the amount to 20 and the size to 2. This will make the shapes and letters appear slightly rough around the edges, not perfectly smooth. As I said before, these are 2 effects that you can use if you want, or not. It's up to you. Finally, you can enable motion blur on all layers. For this animation, I'm going to leave it disabled. And now, the animation is finished and working perfectly. Look at the result we achieved. If you get stuck at any step or there's something you don't understand, because there are many layers and keyframes, write to me in the comments and we'll sort it out. Cheers and see you in the next video.